Well, Troy, thanks for joining us today on the first episode of our Lunchbox Roundtable. I know you had a video maybe a week or so ago, and it seemed like it might be a good fit for this week's episode. We're kind of talking about, you were saying this isn't another COVID video.
Right.
And that's kind of, while we can't ignore everything that's going on now, it's, how do we look forward? There are a lot of changes that are going on now, but how do we, when this thing inevitably ends, how do we move forward? And then what from those changes are going to be permanent changes that affect retail, restaurants, healthcare, financial, all these different things. I think the biggest thing about this whole crisis is that it really hits the core of our economy, everybody's daily lives. Obviously you and I are working from home right now doing this video interview. So that's just one indication of all the things that have changed so much. So I guess before we jump into that, Troy, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and kind of what
Sure.
you do?
Yeah, so I Troy Batchelor. I currently am the Director of Sales in the retail vertical for Corrigo. Corrigo is a platform that helps companies just drive the costs out of managing multiple locations as it relates to maintenance, connecting the right service providers, helping them automate things. That type thing is really where Corrigo shines and helps drive that cost. And then also providing some analytics. And analytics is different than just reporting on your own stuff. It's also about being able to benchmark against the industry and things of that nature. So those are really where Corrigo focuses. My background is actually 30 plus years in retail operations. I started out of high school. I think I've done just about every single job there is in retail, both dirty and management. And so I kind of came to the dark side about 10 years ago working for a service provider. And if you're a retailer, you'll get a kick out of the dark side comment because that's the way it's always referred to. Never saw myself doing sales or anything like that, but it's been a unique ride to say the least. And glad to be part of this conversation. I think it's the new normal is really, everybody's waiting for a decision and kind of waiting for what's going to be next. I think we're all in somewhat looking forward to whatever that decision is, but it will never go back to the way it was. I think that's part that everybody is kind of trying to figure out now, right? What does the new normal look like? For me, working from home and this interaction via computer and using Zoom and all the other technology, it really isn't different than I was operating before. I've operated out of a home office for 10 years. If I had a computer and an airport nearby, I could do my job. And I think, other people are realizing that it's more and more prevalent. What's very different is that you don't get that personal relationship. You can't shake hands and you can't go and meet somebody for a cup of coffee or for lunch and things of that nature. So I'm excited about what that new normal is going to be like going forward. Are you experiencing some of this?
And that's kind of how, yeah, absolutely. And that's a little bit of where this lunchbox thing came from, is that there were a few different industry leaders that we had kind of come together of how do we provide some sort of continuity? How do we help each other share ideas? How do we navigate through this, because there are going to be so many changes when we do come out the other side. And, we don't know all of what those are going to be until we get there. And even when we get there, it may be a kind of a day by day as these things develop, we kind of adjust to, what those changes are. And even at this point, we don't know really what next week holds. It seems like this week where we stand now, there's some good news. It seems like, some curves flattening, like we're here in New York. So we're getting hit pretty hard, but it seems like we're kind of leveling off and maybe getting on the other side of it. So as more optimism comes out, I think people start looking forward to those, what normal life is going to look like.
Yeah, I think what's exciting to see though is look at how innovative some of the companies are, right? When you're forced into a situation where you can't operate as normal, how are companies, and it's cool to see how different companies are adapting to, they're a full-time, brick and mortar retailer. And I saw an article about one the other day where this lady was sending out an email, and basically she was offering a personal shopping experience where she would actually walk the customer through their new clothing line online and help her do different fittings or help her do different things. Now, that is a store manager who reached out to her customer base and said, hey, we can't shop in person together, but let me help you. And we're going to do this virtually. And then once everything gets to you, you can try it on. We can give you some style advice. That's where people are being, I think that's what we're going to see coming out of this. And that's the exciting thing is, how is business going to change in the future? A restaurant where they're doing pickup and more pickup and delivery and all of these delivery things that were becoming prevalent, the Favors of the world, the Uber Eats of the world, things like that. They were kind of in the fringes. They were just catching on. Well, now they're on fire. You can't everybody's getting their food delivered.
Yeah.
So it's going to be cool to see how different companies interact now in our world, right? Service providers and service companies and those folks who support retail, what are we doing differently? This is one thing we're doing differently. But now, how do we begin to monetize and figure out other ways we can monetize the information that we share, the knowledge that we have? How do we teach different people different ways? Can we build some type of a certification program that we can monetize for other organizations? It's going to be, again, those who adapt quickly and think out of the box. Those are the companies that are going to survive this and really come out of this with a whole new income stream.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's on both sides of it. The retailers are doing the same thing where, this thing happens so quickly. So how do we provide continuity to business, and you see the restaurants doing that so quickly. And I think that's something that's been pretty cool. Both the local restaurants, just the mom and pops, but also the national chains that immediately went to curbside. They immediately, have a more robust takeout, a more, the delivery programs, all of these things. But you're right, they were kind of there on the fringes. Some were doing that. Part of it was, I don't think the buyers were quite there yet to where, they saw the advantage of it as much. But all of a sudden, this thing has taken us, probably years. I don't know how many years, but it's taken us years in the advance of innovating some of these things. So not only are the retailers or the clients, changing the way that they deliver their product or service, but the buyers are now purchasing in a different platform. They're purchasing in a different way. They're purchasing at a different location. The point of sale is taking place at a different location where they use the product. They're not eating as much in store. They're eating at home. And those things are now going to reshape the way, both sides interact. And I think the longer that this goes, the more, the higher the chances are that those things are going to be long-term implications of it. And, there's going to be a lot of positives, as you mentioned too, that, it's not all negative. And that's, I'm glad we can touch on that, because I think there is going to be a lot of these changes that are positive. And it's just kind of a tweaking the way, there will be adjustment periods where everybody has to, get used to the new normal. But once we do, there's going to be a lot of opportunity on the side of that, just as you mentioned. So I guess from your role at Corrigo, I know you deal with a lot of different industries. So are you seeing anything from clients now about, in addition to the things that you've mentioned already, just, what their mindset is, how they plan to get through this, and maybe, what they're doing currently ready for the end, or I shouldn't say the end,
Yeah. The end of this lockdown, I think, what we're seeing a lot of is pre-planning for what does it look like. And, I think it's not just about changing a PM schedule or changing a maintenance schedule. It's in addition to that new way that they're going to maintain their locations. It's also how do they begin to educate the customer that they're doing different things than they used to do in order to protect their safety. How are they promoting that, or how are they showing the customer that they're those things? Retailers and restaurants have always done cleanliness, right? That's why the ratings in the restaurant were there, all that kind of stuff. Now, how do we they're looking at ways to make that more in your face as a customer, so that, again, we can build that trust with you as a customer, that when you walk in the front door, you don't have concerns about whether or not the employee base is healthy. You don't have concerns about what's going on in the kitchen. Are they wearing masks? Are they wearing gloves? Same thing with a retailer, right? Retailers typically did everything cleanliness-wise off hours. So do retailers then now begin to shift that into a more customer-facing time frame, so that the customers are actually seeing the things that they're doing to sanitize and to clean and to that kind of stuff? Again, it's more, how are we going to build that customer trust going back in? That's what we're seeing a lot of around the planning stages of, yes, we need to do more as it relates to the sanitizing and things like that. But it really is, how do we communicate to the customer and to the end user that all of this is happening, so that we begin to build that trust back and you feel comfortable about buying? I mean, I feel comfortable if I sent an Uber Eats, right? I'm assuming I have some level of faith that my food's being taken care of, all that kind of stuff. But I had that same level of faith before this, right? When you walked into an eating establishment, you didn't think about what's going to go on or any of that kind of stuff as to whether or not your food was going to come out and you weren't going to get food poisoning. Now food poisoning is the least of your concerns.
Yeah.
And you had that faith and trust. So the question is, will you still have that same level of faith and trust when you start visiting the locations again and start doing it? And a lot of the grocery stores, I think, because those are the ones that are critical, and as well as pharmacies, where they're putting stickers on the ground, they're changing the traffic flow to make sure there are one-way aisles, or they can't do checkout, and how you're standing. All of that, I think, is going to be hugely impactful as we move forward. But it is about projecting that level of trust and faith in how they're handling the situation and how they're making your shopping experience safe. Will that continue, and how will it continue, and how even the face shields, right? If you've been to the grocery store, which I went just the other day, huge face shields, you would have never seen that in a grocery store.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're right. That'll be something that, we've seen a few of our clients do that too. Grocery, I think, kind of led the way on that. But even there are, convenience stores that are doing that now. And even cashless, are they doing, there's a lot less touch points of the interaction when you go to pay. And I think all those things, cash was another thing. So few people carry cash anymore. So is that going to be a thing that gets decreased? So what other kind of opportunities are there for, for payment methods, besides credit cards? More people can use their phones to pay now. And I think that's going to be something that's maybe more difficult on the mom and pop side of things, whether you're, a small local retailer or you're just a owner restaurant. I think those are going to be things that they need to be able to support more. And this process, even with the takeout part of it, though, is because, my wife and I eat out. Still, we'll get takeout or delivery every weekend now. Right. And it's all either over the phone, or there was even one the other day where you put your credit card in a little container. They grab the container, take the container, pay with your card, give the card back to you in the container. So you aren't, even though you're, handing them the credit card, there's no simultaneous touching of the credit card. So I don't even know if that helps completely, but to your point, there are wipes everywhere. There's hand sanitizer everywhere. And a lot of it is, that visual being kind of in your face about it to make sure that the shoppers feel safe there. And I think that'll be a big thing once this does open and we get to the other side of this, that everybody needs to do their part in, as a buyer, you need to be doing your part in, in promoting cleanliness, but then as the retailer or the restaurateur, you need to be very explicitly showing that you are abiding by all these cleaning methods. And it's no longer just the restaurants, it's or just the grocery stores. It is the convenience stores and all the retailers.
Right.
I think banking changing a little bit too. Are you seeing anything like that with any financial clients or clients that are still open that are non-service or non-food providers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back again to where you're able to schedule appointments at a bank. They're using more of the drive up. The technology is there and has been there. To your point, the cashless payments, in some countries, they are actually using facial recognition to be able to see, that's how they're paying, kind of like an iPhone uses it to unlock your screen. I don't know. I think that's the direction we're headed. I think just simply because of the timing of all of this, it's just going to raise that or accelerate, accelerate that innovation, right? I can bet you within the next 3 months, there's going to be either a machine or a dispensary of masks that when you walk into a location or when you drive up to somewhere or before you go in, you can do one of two things. You can grab a mask and glove out of a dispensary, right? They'll either be provided to you for free or something like that. Those are the kind of weird things that there's going to be a whole new segment of businesses launched because of what we're dealing with right now. It's going to be the cashless payment type thing.
Yeah, you're right.
It's going to be greater technology. It's going to be safety and sanitation type stuff. That's what's cool about events like this. Nobody wishes that, we would all wish that this never happened, right? And that certainly
Absolutely.
all the people that were impacted physically and have been sick, we pray for their families and all of those who've been impacted that way. But looking forward and trying to make a positive spin on all of this, the businesses that will be launched and the organizations that will be launched related to, all of these people out of work and now they're, what about food banks and different things like that? It's going to be amazing to see what comes out of this and what is launched because of this, and not just financial. Or new businesses who explode like that. But I'm talking about help organizations, right? People are going to start saving differently. They realize that, oh my God, nobody ever expected for 16 million people in 3 weeks to be out of work. I need to save more. I need to, be prepared more. I need to pay down credit cards more. All that. It's going to be interesting to see how it impacts everything. I know that was a really long-winded answer to your question, but that's the way it goes.
Well, and so I guess it segues kind of well into another topic of how does technology help prop this up? Because with so much innovation, you talked a little bit before about the shopping experience of somebody who made through a new wardrobe or the way that you order your groceries ahead of time. You pick everything out on an app. You go and just pick it up. More banking being done online. So even if you're not using somebody who's solely an online bank, like an Ally, even your local banks providing more of just a stronger online presence for you to do your online banking. And you at Corrigo, you guys do an awful lot in technology too. So what are some of the technology changes that you see happening through this whole thing?
Well, it's really funny because we are extremely surprised at still how many organizations manage their entire processes using older methods. So they're still receiving paper invoices. They're managing things
Yep.
through an Excel document or through email. So they really haven't come into the technological age that is available to them. And retail as a whole tends to be slow to adopt newer things. It's easier to keep doing because they've got large organizations they need to make changes. What we're seeing is the adoption of that technology where it's instant communication, it's instant status updates as to what's going on in locations as it relates to is somebody in the location? Are they doing service today? When did they get here? How long did they stay? When did they get, how long were they there? How long would it build for? What equipment did they work on? And the touchless piece where, an employee uses their own personal device to submit a request. And then from that request, the service provider automatically gets it and they're doing it and they actually interact, never touching a piece of paper. And then from there, it goes to the invoicing piece, and all of that's done electronically and nobody has to touch anything. And it speeds up the process, right? From the time the technician walks out the door saying I'm complete to the time they could get paid is so much shorter because of the technology. Now that's great for some, and it's a whole new way of doing business for others. Some people liked that 30-day, 60-day lag in from when the work got done to when they had to pay for it. Well, everything's gotten shorter because of technology, but it also ensures that what you're getting, the quality of work that you're getting, the vendor service, that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing is much easier to manage using that technology. And so more and more companies are really reaching out and trying to say, how do I adapt this quickly, and taking advantage of the learning opportunities and the community and things like that. So that's really what we're seeing on the technology front, but it really is going to force people now to adopt it much quicker than they had anticipated.
I think that's another good point too, is, everybody is on the same page, whether you're the service provider, the end user, the customer, the retailer, whoever you are. I mean, I know about maybe a year and a half ago, my wife and I tried using an app at a grocery store here locally to do a curbside pickup type thing, just, see how it worked. And It was pretty clunky. So to build your first grocery list, it took us probably 20 minutes to do. So luckily when we go shopping, like 95% of the things that we buy every week are the same. So it was easy to duplicate it after. But even using that, it was like, well, it takes us 30 minutes to do this. By the time we go there, wait, pick it up, it's taken us almost the same amount of time. So it was almost to a point where we'd rather go in and grab the avocado that we wanted rather than just have somebody get it for us. But when those technologies are improved and, that app is so much easier to use, and, it can support a payment right through the app. So you just grab and go. All those things, just to your point, it speeds everything up. So the entire buying process is quicker, even for something like grocery shopping, which you might say, on a given Saturday, you're gonna go out for an hour. It's gonna take an hour to grocery shop. I think those are some things that'll be sped up by this technology.
Yeah, I think the thing that people got to realize is it's not going to get rid of retail. It's not going to change. We're not going to have, ultimately, yes, some restaurants will close or they will change. But I think what we'll see is the overall experience change and how we think about that experience. To that, go back to the example where the young lady offered to do personal shopping. Now that was an online experience, but why couldn't they set an appointment to go into a location and have a personalized experience where they're visiting that retailer? And that would be more clothing and things like that. So I think we'll start to see more and more appointments personal shopping, all that kind of stuff. I'm like you. I like to go in and I want to pick out my own steaks. I want to pick out my own produce and things like that. I don't think that part will ever change. It's just, again, how do they manage that experience? And once we're in the location, how does that experience any different?
Yeah. And, some of this kind of sounds like all the talk about the retail apocalypse that had gone on several years ago.
Yeah.
And it seemed really a lot of that wasn't so much that retail was ending, not brick and mortar, just it changed. And,
right.
The footprints got smaller. The way you buy got different. Especially retailers. There are different retailers that focus more on the buying experience. How do we get people into the store? Places like a Warby Parker, where you don't actually go in and pick your glasses up there, but you can try everything on and everything is then shipped to you. That's something that just was totally different. And those still, they still have the brick and mortar locations, but people go there to do a different thing. So you might not walk in to buy a hat and walk out with your hat, but so it's a shift.
Yep.
And I think a lot of these, it for sure, it'll hurt some retailers, it'll hurt some vendors, whether you're small or large, but there's still going to be a lot that can adapt. And I think that's the theme of this whole thing, is that this is forcing innovation, and those who don't innovate are probably going to suffer pretty drastically. So
yeah, and innovation doesn't have to mean technology. I think innovation, it can be process. Innovation can be how you look at the service experience, how you look at training your managers and the field and the folks in the location. All of that is going to be encompassed in what does that innovation look like. And so I think, anybody listening who you may be a small company going, hey, technology is not going to really do it for me. Okay. So innovation doesn't have to deal with technology. Innovation can deal with a lot of different things. So how are you going to apply innovation to what you do and in your specific deal? That's really what it amounts to.
And from what I've seen, innovation could also mean just how do you provide a better service or product or whatever.
Totally agree.
I think a lot of the restaurant industry here, I live in Saratoga Springs, New York, and, there's huge restaurant industry, and they're all vying for, kind of the shrunk market of who's going out to eat. But what that also means is that the customer service is phenomenal right now. And, it's usually pretty good, but it's been stepped up, and you see the grocery stores doing the same thing. People are, happy to see each other. They're happy to have you in their stores. They're happy to have you spending money there. And I think, from you and I are both on the vendor side of things, but I think we need to be doing the same. You find out a lot about how people or companies operate, especially through a crisis like this. And you kind of, I think people are going to remember that. So when they come out the other side, they know how, the vendor, were they there for them? Were they supporting them in any way that they could? But also when I went in to shop at, whatever grocery store, how was I greeted? You see the way that when you go to pay for your pickup order for dinner, they're so happy. Thank you so much for your support during this time. I think there's going to be a lot of that, maybe the customer service just in general is really pushed forward.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely. But it's going to come back, and it will look different. But once you do come back, now what? Now, how are you going to handle it? And you got to decide that right now before it even happens.
Yeah. And, speaking of innovation, it's not just these big companies. It's, it kind of comes down to a very personal level. What can we be doing to, make ourselves better, and not just for our employer, but just in general?
Yeah. So, personally, I've always been a big avid learner, reader. I love podcasts. I like to stretch what can I learn more about marketing? What can I learn more about technology? All of that kind of stuff. And really been able to take advantage of how can I sharpen my skills right now when I'm not able to meet as many clients, or I'm not as traveling as much. I continue to figure out ways that I can add value to my organization that I represent, Corrigo, as well as my own personal brand and how can I bring value to others as well.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Troy, we appreciate you, coming on to do this first video session with us. I think there are a lot of good ideas, and just because of how disruptive this thing is and how to the core of everybody's, personally, professionally, economically, there's a lot of different ways that this could go. And I think, looking at it optimistically is really the best way, really the only way that we can operate through this, because when it does end, we need to be ready for whatever that normal is. And I know we all want to see it return to normal. So we appreciate your input, and thanks for coming on for the first Lunchbox.
Hey, thanks for having me. That's been great. I appreciate it. Take care, and everybody stay safe.
Thanks, Troy.
Yep.